Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing very well. I am Crest Nether, welcome to the Fey Groves here on twitch.tv/NetherVT, or maybe you're watching this on YouTube, in which case, hello YouTube. I hope you're doing well. My pronouns are they, he, or in this form you can use she, her as well, don't mind if you do. And today, in a continuation of last week's stream, we are going to go to read some more Daggerheart. Last week we had a relatively long discussion for the first chapter of the book, as well as making a character. We made a fungrel seraph called Beefsteak. And I thought that was a very fun character. So today we are going to go into chapter 2 of the book, The Flow of the Game. And with that, I'm going to turn on some other music. Maybe some Fabula Ultima music? Sure. Stom is third! Hello Stom. Also Zyri and Perpetually Exhausted. Well done, you being first and second, and Stom managed to defeat a skeleton, and Derek I managed to defeat a group of bandits. Well done, the both of you. So, without further ado, let's go into the book if all goes well. The real skeleton was inside of me all along. Oh no. Zyri defeating a centaur, and Sarah unfortunately failing to defeat a centaur. It's probably not the same one. Or it is, and Sarah just weakened it after Zyri defeated it. Time is weird in the Fey Groves. Enjoy your lurk, Stom. But yeah, we are here in chapter 2 playing an adventure, and look at the art. They mentioned in the launch party stream of Daggerheart, there are 3 genders. One is big beefy lady. One is just a little guy. And the third is baby girl. And I believe they had some cute wizard goblin art for baby girl, as an example. What is Derek I making? It's a coin of only tails! Now whether that means it is a double-sided coin with 2 tails on it instead of heads and tails, or if it's a coin that for some reason gives you a tail, I shall not divulge. But we are going and reading into this. We have The Flow of the Game. In a session of Daggerheart, you and the other players go around the table describing what your characters do in the fictional circumstances that the GM sets up. So, very basic TTRPG stuff. For those familiar with role-playing games, the flow of the game might come naturally, but if you're new to this experience, it might not. That is fair. It needs to be said, but it is not something that is said for my benefit. It is said for the benefit of someone who has not had the same, well, 10 years experience now? Because I started playing TTRPGs seriously in 2015. Before then, it was an interest of mine. Oh dear, I am seeing a typo. They're wailing. Anyway, this is not so much for me, but let's see. Have 5 steps. GM narrates details, the players and GM ask questions, the players and GM answer questions, they choose and resolve actions, and then the recycle repeats. But here we have Gamesy. There's a lot of centaurs going around today. Also, do make sure that you're following Gamesy and Sunberry, because they are currently streaming Enshrouded together. Let me also shout out Sunberry. And then... Oh, Arcraft, you sadly failed to defeat the punching bag. It is enchanted, so don't feel too bad. Most of the time you get defeated by the punching bag as a surprise action, because you do not expect the punching bag to punch back. But yeah, core mechanics of Daggerheart and how to use them. The spotlight. Anytime a character becomes the focus of a scene, they're in the spotlight. Even if many characters are involved in a dramatic moment, there is often one character leading the action. This might be the player character putting their ally to safety, the NPC haggling over the price of rare goods, or the adversary attacking with their foul weapon. The spotlight organically moves around the table as scenes unfold, but the mechanics of the game might also determine where the spotlight goes next. For example, if a player rolls with fear on their duality dice during combat, the mechanics allow the GM to then spotlight an adversary to act against the heroes. Woohoo. I'm sorry, Warcraft. It happens. I hope you're doing well, though. Nice to see you again. On your turn. Daggerheart's turns don't follow a traditional rigid format. You don't have a set number of actions you can take or things you can do before play passes to someone else. Players should follow the natural flow of the fiction to figure out what happens next, bouncing the spotlight around the table to whoever it makes sense to focus on in that moment. No worries, take care and enjoy your lurk. Good luck getting ready for your night shift, Arcraft. Wait a little while longer for this particular shout out. There we go. Shout out for Gamesy as well. If you aren't following Gamesy and or Sunberry, please do so. They are a delight, both of them. They are 2 delights, actually. Right, so. They bounce the spotlight around the table. However, all players should keep in mind who has recently had the spotlight and try to find opportunities to give every character a chance to act. Optional tool, Spotlight Tracker. If your group prefers tactical play or structured player turns, you can limit the number of actions each PC has available to them at a time. We recommend that you start with 3, but you can increase or decrease the number as your table prefers. If you use this system, when a battle begins, every player places action tokens on their character sheets to represent how many actions they can take. Players then act as usual. Each time they make an action roll, or perform a significant action while in the spotlight, they remove 1 token from their sheet. Collaborate with other players to pass play around the table, making moves and telling the story together. Even if you have multiple action tokens, see if any other players want a chance to act before you spend more than 1 in a row. Once every player has used all their available tokens, players refill their character sheet with the same number of tokens as before, then continue playing. I think that's a fun way of kind of teaching that. And so I think someone who is more used to D&D or Pathfinder and having like, this is my turn in initiative, I think this works very well to kind of wean them off of that. Right. When you decide to do something in the story, the spotlight shifts to you. Your player makes a move, which you describe to the group. Move is an action a character takes to advance a story, such as talking to another character, interacting with the environment, using a class feature or spell, or anything else a character can do within the scene. Some low-stakes moves automatically succeed, but while heroic high-stakes moves often require a roll to determine the outcome, it is... while... That is a sentence that doesn't make sense. Sorry about that. Bump into the microphone. But while heroic high-stakes moves often require a roll to determine the outcome, it's hard to break down a barricaded door. When you make a move and the result of that action is in question, the fiction pauses while you make an action roll to see how things play out. Somewhere there should have been another M dash. Anyway, combat has no initiative order, no rounds, no distinct number of actions you can take while in the spotlight. Fights play out narratively from moment to moment, just like non-combat scenes. This freeform combat gives players the freedom and opportunity to team up, respond on the fly to narrative changes in the scenes, and follow the fiction. If they aren't mechanically locked into combat, players might find it easier to choose a solution other than violence, such as having their characters flee from their opponents or come to a temporary truce with their enemies. Player characters aren't the only ones making moves. The GM can make a GM move. Ooh, this is my bread and butter. That is fun. Typically, GM moves escalate the scene in an exciting and dangerous way. A new threat might emerge from the woods. PCs could be separated by a sudden cave-in, or another similar action may significantly change the scene. I think these kind of things work better in a game like this, where it is rules... I wouldn't say this is rules light, this is rules loose. There are a lot of rules, because, you know, it's a big book, but the rules are looser than compared to D&D or such games. And I think that's why this would work. And not so much in D&D, where you expect to have your own turn and you're expected to not necessarily like make optimal choices, but make choices that defeat an enemy. Many GM moves don't require spending any resources, but the GM can spend fear to make additional or more powerful moves, such as using an adversary or environment's fear move. Ooh, I want to see about that. But here we have the duality dice. We've already talked about how you roll 2d12s. You choose 2 d12s of different colors, or if you prefer different sizes or patterns. One to represent hope, the other to represent fear. Hello, Fulltook, enjoy your lurk. So, rolling with hope or fear. When you roll your duality dice, duality dice, and the hope die rolls higher than the fear die, you roll with hope. When this happens on an action roll, even if you fail, mark one of the hope slots on your character sheet. You might also gain hope from spells, abilities, or other events that happen during the game. And fear, when you roll higher on the fear die than the hope die, you roll with fear. When this happens on the action roll, even if you succeed, the GM gains a fear, and there are consequences or complications that come from the action you are attempting. So I mentioned previously in the previous stream, there were 4 degrees of success, but there are actually 5, and critical successes are the 5th. When you roll the duality dice and both dice roll the same number, that is a critical success. Critical success counts as a roll with hope. Even if you would have otherwise failed because the total is lower than the roll's difficulty. You have about an 8-point 3 repeating chance of getting a critical success, which is higher than getting a critical hit on a d20, so rolling a natural 20. When you critically succeed on a roll, along with gaining a hope, you also clear a stress from your character sheet. Critical success counts as a roll with hope, even if you would have otherwise failed because the total is lower than the roll's difficulty. Wait. This does not say that a critical success... It doesn't say that it is a success. It is called a success, but is it a success? This is the D&D brain talking here, because with D&D, something has to be called a certain thing to be a thing. Annoying. I think like it's called a critical success, so it's not a critical hit or anything. It is a success. It must succeed, even if you would have otherwise failed because the total is lower than the roll's difficulty. Yeah, that's it. And if you can't succeed on that, you shouldn't roll at all, I think. Yeah. You also deal extra damage. Good. Using hope is an important thing as well. When you've gained hope and recorded it on your character sheet, you can spend it to power special abilities, clearing it from your character sheet when you do. Your hope carries over between sessions, but you can only hold a maximum of 6 hope at a time, so we recommend you look for opportunities to spend it. You can help an ally, utilize an experience, initiate a tag team roll, or activate a hope feature. So, you can spend a hope to help an ally who's making an action roll you could feasibly support. When you do this, describe how you're helping and roll a d6 advantage die. So advantage and disadvantage is in this game, but it doesn't work the same as in 5th edition D&D, which we'll get to later. Any number of PCs can help an ally as long as they spend a hope to do so. The ally being helped might also gain advantage on the roll from another source. In this case, they'd roll their own d6 advantage die. If the ally has gained advantage on a roll from multiple sources, they take the highest of all the advantage dice rolled and add the result to their action roll. So, in case someone is helping and rolls like a 1, you can help out and see if you can roll higher. But it doesn't mean that all of those results added. It only adds the highest advantage die. Good, okay. You can utilize an experience. You can spend a hope to use one of your relevant experiences on an action or reaction roll, adding its modifier to the result. If more than one experience applies to the situation, you can spend an additional hope for each experience you want to use. Okay. Initiate a tag team roll. You can spend 3 hope to initiate a tag team roll between you and another PC in order to combine your efforts together in an exciting and scene-defining moment. Curious. I wonder what that is. Or activate a hope feature. Any effect it allows or requires you to spend hope to activate its effects. When using a hope feature, if you rolled with hope for that action, the hope you gain from that roll can be spent on that feature or towards it, if it requires spending multiple hope. Some effects only trigger on a success with hope. This doesn't mean you can spend hope on a successful roll with fear to get the effect. It means the effect only occurs when you roll with hope and succeed on your action roll. Okay. Each class has a unique hope feature, and if you find yourself maxing out on hope, using your hope feature could give you the upper hand, but remember to look for opportunities to use hope to help your allies and utilize your experiences. You will be gaining hope regularly, and it's meant to be used often. Okay. Then fear. As a player, rolling with fear doesn't mean your action roll fails. Instead, you face a complication or consequence. For example, your character learns only some of the information they need, suffers a counterattack from the adversary. Or encounters an unexpected danger or hazard. If you fail the action roll where you rolled with fear, those consequences or complications are worse. When you roll with fear, you don't record it on your character sheet. Instead, the GM gains a fear and makes a move to reflect the complications of your fear roll. The GM can spend the fear they gain on effects such as spotlighting an adversary or making fear moves. Okay. Then we have evasion, which is the similar to the armor class from D&D 5th edition. Your character's ability to avoid attacks and other unwanted effects from adversaries. Your base evasion is determined by your class, but it can be modified by domain cards, equipment, conditions, and more. Although these descriptions add to your character and the story your group is telling together, they don't change the normal evasion rules or give you special bonuses. For example, you might describe how your character uses a powerful burst of magic to redirect an arrow headed their way, but it doesn't mean you can redirect the arrow back at the attacker and deal the damage to them instead. Then we get hit points and damage thresholds. So, as previously stated, hit points are not the same as damage. There is a conversion that needs to happen. When you take damage, you mark between 1 and 3 HP, representing the harm your character suffers. The number of hit points you mark is determined by your damage thresholds. The threshold bar in the damage and health. The threshold bar in the damage and health section of your character sheet show the 3 thresholds of damage you can take: minor, major, or severe. The character's level is added to their armor's damage thresholds to determine their final damage thresholds. For example, at level 1 Guardian wearing chainmail armor with thresholds of 7 and 15 would start with the following threshold: 8 and 16. So, if you are dealt damage and it's, let's see, equal to or above your severe threshold, so 16 or higher, you get 3 HP that you mark. If it's 8 to 15, you do 2 HP. And if it's 1 to 7, you mark 1 HP. As seen in this example here. Anytime you make a downtime move, you have the opportunity to clear some of your marked hit points. Additionally, as your character levels up, you can choose to permanently increase their number of hit points, making them more resilient against incoming attacks. Optional rule: massive damage. To make the game more dangerous, your table can implement a massive threshold. If you ever take damage equal to double your severe threshold, you mark 4 hit points. Because normally it is supposed to be your upper damage threshold is double your minor to major threshold. We have stress. That represents the mental and physical strain your character suffers during their adventures. Some features, such as your spells or abilities, might require you to mark a stress to use them. Additionally, the GM might offer you the chance to mark a stress in exchange for succeeding at the action you're taking. When you mark this stress, consider the burden your character knowingly accepts. Does their anxiety increase as they use a new tactic in a high-stakes negotiation? Do they willingly dive back into danger and witness unimaginable horrors, knowing the toll it takes on them to save an innocent life? Are they willing to take minor abrasions to fatally wound their foe? I realize I am going to have to take a little bit of a break to get some water. So I will be at the BRB screen for a moment. I'll be right back. Hello, welcome back, or at least I am back. I just needed to get some water for my voice, because I'm talking a lot here. So, when an effect requires you to mark a stress, do so on the slots on your character sheet. When you mark your last stress, you become vulnerable until you clear at least one stress. If you're ever forced to mark one or more stress but your slots are already full, you must instead mark one hit point. For example, if an adversary forces you to mark 3 stress but your stress is already filled, you instead mark 1 hit point. If you would take 2 stress from an enemy and you have 1 stress left, you would mark 1 stress and 1 hit point. As with hit points, you have the opportunity to clear some of your marked stress when you make downtime moves. Additionally, as your character levels up, you can choose to permanently increase the amount of stress they can withstand. You can gain stress from adversaries, from complications, and from moves. Then we have action rules. Pick a character trait. Could be presence or agility. Any of the 6 that you have. Let me bring Beefsteak up here. Because I do realize this game does not have skills in the way that other games do. That you have your traits, your abilities. And you then roll like to sprint, dodge, leap, lift, smash, grapple, control, hide, tinker, perceive, sense, navigate, charm, perform, deceive, recall, analyze, and comprehend. So if you want to charm someone, it's a +1. You don't have a bonus because you're trained in charming, for instance. Do I have anything? Yeah. These are just the details that we've discussed. And our journal is empty. But yeah. So you choose your character trait or rolling by the GM, or maybe you talk with them about how it works. You add extra dice and modifiers if any experiences or other modifiers apply. Roll the dice, you resolve the situation. Very basic. And here you have the 5 degrees of success. Critical success, you get what you want and a little extra. There we have the spelled out solution. Success with hope, you get what you want, you gain a hope. You get what you want with fear, but it comes with a cost or consequence. Failure with hope, things don't go as planned, you gain a hope, and failure with fear is the worst option. Some examples for the action rolls. Let's go through failure with fear, how things could go. Aaliyah's warrior Tabby is trying to run across a narrow parapet to stop a mage who is raining spellfire down on her party. The GM, Stella, tells Aaliyah to make an agility roll with a difficulty of 15. Ifrit is well rested, I hope. I hope you have a good lurk. And yeah, I guess you need a rest after failing to defeat a bunch of bandits, unfortunately. So, Stella, the GM, tells Aaliyah to make an agility roll with a difficulty of 15. Plus 2 agility. So, Aaliyah rolls the duality dice and adds 2 tokens. Aaliyah rolls a 3 on the hope die and 6 on the fear die, then adds 2 from her agility for a result of 11 with fear. 11 is below the roll's difficulty. Stella gains fear, and because play passes back to her on a failure, describes the mage making an attack roll in response to Tabby's maneuver. The attack is successful, so the mage knocks her off the parapet with a blast of magical fire and deals damage. Tabby crashes down onto the ground below and must find a way back up if she plans to face the mage head-on again. So, an attack and a knockdown effect. Comparatively with here, failure with hope. Mage sees Tabby coming and makes an attack which succeeds. Mage's blast knocks Tabby off balance, leaving her dangling from the parapet. Her progress stalled and position precarious, so she's hanging down here, and there she is just knocked off the ceiling, the roof. There it is. Story is consequence. In Daggerheart, every time you roll the dice, the scene changes in some way. There's no such thing as a roll where nothing happens, as the fiction constantly evolves based on the successes and failures of the characters. Failure doesn't mean you simply don't get what you want, especially if that would result in a moment of inaction. The game is more interesting when every action the players take yields an active outcome, something that develops the situation they're in. It's very true. We have special action rolls, trait rolls, an action roll that calls for a specific character trait to be used. So we have those. Make a presence roll. Let me see if I can roll that with you seeing this. Let me do it like this. And there you have a 21. Hope 5, Fear 9, plus 6 for advantage. So it rolls 21 with fear. Let me just bring that back here. But yeah. So trait rolls are pretty much skill checks, as we know from D&D 5th edition. Attack rolls are pretty much the same as attack rolls in 5th edition. Unarmed attack rolls. When your character makes an attack without a weapon, for example a punch or kick, you make an attack roll using strength or finesse. Though the gem might allow you to use another trait depending on how you describe the attack. On success, you deal D4 physical damage using your proficiency. Spellcast rolls. If a spellcast roll can damage a target, it's also considered an attack roll. You can't just make up magic effects that aren't on your character sheet or cards. However, They might allow you to, the GM might allow you to creatively apply an existing spell in an unusual way. Yeah, that's fair. Sometimes these sentences don't make sense. Example 2. To explain why their rune circle spell gives them protection from adversaries, a wizard wants to flavor that spell as an eruption of sparks from their wand that forms a galloping stallion circling around them. That's awesome and should be highly encouraged, but if dealing
might be a good time to take a sippy. You know, to stay hydrated. I should know, I'm a blow high.
Hydration is important. This is a threat. Hello, Lily. It is important. Thank you very much for the reminder. Right. So that's awesome and should be highly encouraged. But if dealing extra damage to an adversary because of this narration falls outside the scope of the spell, that's not a sentence that works. That's awesome and should be highly encouraged. But do not add the if. But dealing extra damage to an adversary because of this narration falls outside the scope of the spell. That's how it works. Why am I so nitpicky? Right. Group action roles and tag team roles. When multiple characters take action together, such as sneaking through an adversary's camp as a group, the party nominates one character to lead the action. Typically, the character with the highest bonus to the most applicable skill. Each player then describes how their character collaborates on the task. The action's leader makes an action roll as usual, while the other characters or players make a reaction roll using whichever traits they and the GM decide fits best. See the upcoming reaction rolls section. They can use different traits for their reaction rolls if they wish. The leader's action roll gains a +1 bonus for each reaction roll that succeeds, and a -1 penalty for each reaction roll that fails. See, upcoming reaction rolls section. Okay. Tag team rolls. Once per session, each player can choose to spend 3 hope and initiate a tag team roll between their character and another player character. When you do, work with the other character's player to describe how you combine your actions in a unique and exciting way. You both make separate action rolls, but before resolving the roll's outcome, choose one of the rolls to apply for both of your results. On a roll with hope, all PCs involved gain a hope. On a roll with fear, the GM gains a fear for each player character involved. Tag team rolls are especially powerful on attack rolls. When you and your partner succeed on a tag team roll attack, you both roll damage and add the totals together to determine the damage dealt. If the attack deals different types of damage, physical or magical, you choose which type to deal. A tag team roll counts as a single action roll for the purposes of any countdowns or features that track action rolls. Okay. So reaction rolls are on this page, but we have damage rolls. Proficiency. Your proficiency reflects how skilled you are at wielding weapons. You start at 1 proficiency and can increase this value to a maximum of 6 over the course of the campaign. So that is something that you can do with leveling up, I believe. Okay, we're calculating damage. Very much based off of the weapons you use or the spells you take. Oh, interesting. Proficiency determines how many damage dice you roll. So on a 1 you roll, for instance, 1d8 for a broadsword, going up to 68 when your proficiency is at 6. Oh, I think I like that system. Critical successes and damage. If your attack roll critically succeeds, your attack deals extra damage. Start with the highest possible value the damage dice can roll, and then make a damage roll as usual, adding it to that value. So, Miles starts with a maximum roll of 2d6 for a total of 12 damage. Then he rolls a 2d6 and they land on a 4 and a 5, totaling 9. Finally, it adds the +1 modifier. Highest possible value highest possible value the damage dice can roll, not the modifiers. Multiple sources of damage. Whenever damage would be applied more than once to a creature during a PC's move, damage is always total before it's applied to the adversary's damage threshold. Oh. Okay, but if the orc then decides to keep the spotlight and make another attack, it's a separate move. Yeah, okay. Otherwise you can just pummel and then get to 3 hit points for an adversary, and then say, like, I'm done. Okay, that works. Let me just check something. Okay. Reaction rolls, that's what I was looking for as well. Some moves prompt a reaction roll. This is a save in 5e. This is a roll in response to an attack or hazard representing your effort to avoid or withstand the effect. They work similarly to an action roll, except they don't generate hope, fear, or additional GM moves. Okay. Additionally, other characters can't help you on a reaction roll. Every second counts, so you'll have to handle this alone. The GM tells you what traits to use, then you make a roll with the duality dice as if it were an action roll. If you want to add a bonus to your reaction roll, you must decide to do so before you roll. If you critically succeed on a reaction roll, you don't clear a stress or gain a hope, but you do ignore any effects that would still impact you on a success, such as taking damage or marking stress. So there is a critical success on saves, or on reaction rolls. Nice. Also, beefy boy. Good art. Advantage and disadvantage. Advantage represents an opportunity that you seize to increase your chances of success. When you roll with advantage, you add a d6 advantage die to your total. When you roll with disadvantage, you subtract a d6 disadvantage die from your total. If you find yourself both adding and subtracting a d6 for any reason, roll neither, since they cancel each other out. Okay. The flow of combat in Daggerheart is malleable and driven by the dice. Player characters pass the spotlight between themselves, making moves until someone fails a roll or rolls with fear, or until the GM spends a fear to interrupt the player's turns. When play passes to the GM can make a move to spotlight an adversary, and if they wish, can spend any number of fear to spotlight that many additional adversaries. Ah, I see. I feel that here is where it gets tough to balance things. Or if there's any indication from the book that goes on about how a DM should use adversaries in particular. Spotlighted adversary can take any action the fiction demands of them, but most of the time they'll do one of the following. Move within close range and then make a standard attack, move within close range and use an adversary action, clear a condition, sprint within far or very far range on the battlefield. Okay. For example, let's read the example here. After Quinn makes an attack roll with fear for their Druid Shepherd, play moves to the GM. The GM spotlights a nearby adversary who is temporarily vulnerable and describes them breaking free from the vines that are binding them to remove the vulnerable condition. The GM has 6 fear available, so they spend 1 to spotlight the adversary Shepherd just hit with their short staff. The GM describes the adversary pulling their warhammer out of the mud and swinging at Shepherd's ribs. The adversary succeeds on the attack, then rolls for damage and totals it for 9 physical damage. This damage falls above Shepherd's major threshold, but Quinn marks an armor slot and reduces the damage by 1 tier to minor instead, marking 1 hit point. Spending another fear to shift the spotlight again, the GM describes an additional adversary sprinting all the way across the battlefield to get to the massive bell that would signal reinforcements. As the adversary prepares to ring it, the GM returns play to the players asking, "What do you want to do?" Okay, so that seems interesting the way it works. Then we get domain cards. So you have the cards, and for instance, we have those here as well, somewhat. I believe, yeah, these are the domain cards that we chose. We have Bare Bones, and we have Reassurance. I believe those are both... Valor? Or Splendor? Wait, no. I believe one is Valor, and the other is Splendor, but I do not know for certain. Is that visible somewhere? But this is Valor. And Reassurance... Reassurance is Splendor. Yeah. It's different. Mark. You can have a maximum of 5 active domain cards in your loadout at any one time. So you start with 2. And you build them out until you at least have 5. Your subclass, ancestry, and community cards don't count towards that limit. So if I press View Vault, you have no cards in your vault because we have the 2 out already. Your vault holds any domain cards that are inactive and not currently in your loadout. They should be kept somewhere out of the way, but close enough that they're available if needed to be accessed during a session if you want to swap them into your loadout. To immediately switch a card from your vault to your loadout, mark a number of stress equal to the vaulted card's recalled cost. So restoration is 2 stress. When you do, switch it for another domain card in your loadout and place that card into your vault. Swapping when you level up. If your loadout is full when you level up and gain a new card, you can immediately move one of your active cards into your vault and add the new card to your loadout at no cost. Some domain cards have an exhaustion limit that restricts how often you can use that card, for instance, 1 per long rest. If you use that card, you'll need a way to remember that it's temporarily unavailable. You might choose to take that card out of your hand and place it face down on the table, turn it on its side or upside down, or any other method to remind yourself that you've already used it. Yeah. And sometimes it asks you to add tokens. So here you have After a long rest, place a number of tokens equal to your spellcast trait on this card. For instance, 2. Touch a creature and spend any number of tokens to clear 2 hit points or 2 stress for each token spent. Using 1 clears 2, using 2 clears 4. You can also end the vulnerable condition or physical or magical ailments by spending. Then we get to conditions. Also, that's a badass halfling. We have hidden, restrained, vulnerable. Those are the primary conditions. When you're out of sight from all foes and they don't know where you are, you gain the hidden condition. While hidden, any rolls against you have disadvantage. After an adversary moves to where they would see you, you move into their line of sight, or you make an attack, you are no longer hidden. Oh. After an adversary moves to where they would see you, you move into their line of sight, or you make an attack, you are no longer hidden. When you gain the restrained condition, you can't move until this condition is cleared, but you can still take actions from your current position. And when you gain the vulnerable condition, you're in a difficult position within the fiction. This might mean you're knocked over, scrambling to keep your balance, caught off guard, magically enfeebled, or anything else that makes sense in this scene. When a creature becomes vulnerable, players and GM should work together to describe narratively how that happened. When you are vulnerable, all rolls targeting you have advantage. Okay, so that's why the spell can end the vulnerable condition. Without it necessarily having to do with stress. Clearing conditions. When an effect imposes a condition, it might say it is temporary or only applies temporarily. The condition is a temporary condition. You can make an action roll with a difficulty determined by the GM to try clearing a temporary condition. The GM might have you clear it another way. Okay. Some effects aren't a condition but state that they are temporary. They can be ended in the same way as temporary conditions. If you initiate the effect, the GM can end it by spotlighting the adversary and describing how they get rid of it. Conversely, if the GM initiates the effect, you can try to end it by making an appropriate action roll. Sometimes the GM or a specific mechanic utilizes a countdown. Countdowns are a way for the table to keep track of a coming event, which you do by setting a die to a certain value, then ticking that number down until it reaches 0. Countdown might tick down every time an action roll is made, every time a PC rolls with fear, during its downtime, or any other parameter either set by the specific mechanics or by the GM to reflect the fiction. So we have clocks in this game. We have maps, range, and movement. Your group might want to use maps for clarifying positioning, showcase, and environment, or simply because you enjoy maps and miniatures. Yeah, I do enjoy that. We have optional rules for defined ranges. Melee is 1 square, very close is 3 squares, close is 6 squares, far is 12 squares, very far is more than 13 squares, 13 or more, and out ranges of the battle map. That is fair, unless you know how big my battle maps are. Sometimes. I should go and take a break soon. We have movement, moving close during actions. This location must be somewhere your character could plausibly and easily reach within the narrative. You want to move somewhere beyond your close range, but within far or very far range, or if you want to reach an area that is not quite accessible, such as climbing, swimming, or jumping, such as one that requires climbing, swimming, or jumping, use the following rules. If you're not already making an action roll, you want to move farther than your close range, You'll need to succeed on an agility roll to safely reposition yourself. Okay. An adversary movement. When an adversary is in the spotlight and makes a move such as attacking a target or picking a lock, the GM can move them within their close range as part of their action. For example, the adversary can pick a lock to open a door and then move within their close range towards a PC inside a room beyond. Makes sense. Your target needs to be clumped together if you are targeting a group. When your attack deals damage to more than one target, roll damage once and apply the total to each target that attacks succeeded against. When you take cover behind something that makes attacking you more difficult but not impossible, attack rolls against you are made with disadvantage. You usually can't be targeted if you're entirely behind a substantial structure like a wall, even if you're technically in range of the attack. You might still be affected by nearby explosions or similar effects that target an area. Some effects require the target to be within your line of sight. You have line of sight if you can see the target, though in some situations the GM might decide the effect can't go through a glass window or similarly transparent object. Darkness can also make certain actions more challenging. The GM should reflect this by raising the difficulty of action rolls or imposing disadvantage on rolls made by the PCs. Gold is measured in handfuls, bags, and chests, with 10 handfuls to one bag and 10 bags to one chest. You can only carry one full chest of gold. The value of gold is abstracted, so you don't need to track it precisely. If you want to tip a coin to a waiter or flip a coin into a well, you don't need to worry about it. Okay. I see what you're doing. Downtime. We'll talk about downtime after our break. First, some wisdom from Harry.
Hey chat. Might be a good thing to stretch your legs, straighten your back, take your meds if you need to, get something to drink, get comfy while you're at it.
Alright, see you. Bye! Hello, welcome back. If you haven't taken any beverages lately or anything to drink, do get something to drink, as we're here for a while. We're talking about downtime. Hello, Sarah. So we have each PC has the chance to make 2 downtime moves. Short rests, you can tend to wounds, clear stress, repair armor, and prepare to gain hope. If you choose to prepare with 1 or more members of your party, you each gain 2 hope. With clearing hit points, you can clear hit points equal to 1d4 plus your tier. But tier 1, 1d4 plus 1. Same with stress. Repair armor, clear a number of armor slots equal to 1d4 plus tier. Can't do this. You can do this to an ally's armor instead. So maybe you can decide like, hey, I'm the armorer. For a long rest, you can clear all hit points, clear all stress, repair all armor, prepare, same as short rest, or work on a project. If a PC wants to pursue a project that would take them a substantial amount of time but that they can work on during a long rest, they should first discuss it with the GM. This could involve deciphering an ancient text, crafting a new weapon, or something similar. I like that they've codified this as a downtime activity, because in the games that I play, this rarely comes up. It's like, oh, can we take a long rest? Okay, we just press a button and our stats are back to full. Rather than thinking about, okay, what are we actually doing during this break? So I like that codifying this. I like that it is codified in this game. They either automatically take down their countdown if they work on a project, or the GM might ask them to make an action roll to gauge their progress. That's fair. I think with the rolls that you have here, you can go for like 1 tick, 2 ticks, or maybe 3 ticks for a critical success. And base your progress on that. Resting can refresh the availability of your features and end some temporary effects. That makes sense. And some features say you can use them once per session. They don't refresh during rests, but instead are available again at the start of your next gaming session. If your table decides to play a long session, the GM might decide that all once per session abilities are refreshed during a break and play instead. That is a fair thing. Death. Facing death is an important part of being an adventurer, and having a character die can be an exciting end to a story, as well as an opportunity for the player to transition into something new. When you mark your last hit point, you must make a death move. You must choose one of the following. A blaze of glory. Your character embraces death and goes out in a blaze of glory. You take 1 action, which critically succeeds, then cross through the veil of death. You can avoid death and face the consequences. They temporarily drop unconscious, and then you work with your GM to describe how the situation worsens. The character can't move or act while unconscious, they can't be targeted by an attack, and they return to consciousness when an ally clears 1 or more of their marked hit points, or when the party finishes a long rest. After your character falls unconscious, roll your hope die. If its value is equal to or under your character's level, they gain a scar. Okay. And so you more easily gain a scar at higher levels? Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. like they're not as young as they used to be. Or they risk it all. Roll your duality dice. If the hope die is higher, your character stays on their feet and clears an amount of hit points or stress equal to the value of the hope die. Divide the hope die value between hit points and stress however you prefer. If the fear die is higher, your character crosses through the veil of death. You critically succeed, your character stays up and clears all hit points and stress. Oh, that is... Ooh, that can be... Ooh, okay, that is interesting. If you choose to avoid death, you might take a scar. If you do, cross out one of your hope slots. You can't use this slot anymore. The narrative impact of the scar is up to you. Oh. For example, you might now bear a physical scar. Well, that's one form of character development, yes. For example, you might now bear a physical scar, a painful memory, or a deep fear. Scars are permanent, but can be healed at the GM's discretion as a downtime project, a reward for a quest focused on healing that scar, or something with similar narrative weight. If you ever cross out your last hope slot, it is time to end your character's journey. Work with the GM to find a fitting way for the party to say goodbye to them at the end of the session, then prepare a new character at the current level of the rest of the party for the next time you play. It is possible to resurrect a dead player, though it's often a long, difficult, and costly process. The party decides to take this path upon a character's death. The GM details the steps the party must take to complete the resurrection. There's also the resurrection spell available from the Splendor domain at level 10. But that is like... Level 10 is the end of progress. That is like end of campaign possibilities. I do like that they say like the GM tells you what to do for the resurrection, but it also tells you resurrection is possible. Aw, look at that fun grill. That's not so fun. Following rules apply to many aspects of the game. This game doesn't use fractions. If you need to round to a whole number, round up unless otherwise specified. When a feature allows you to re-roll a die, you always take the new result. You do not choose between the first and the new one unless the feature specifically says that you can. When a feature refers to incoming damage, it's describing the damage amount a target is currently receiving. For example, the Dwarves' Increased Fortitude feature allows a PC to spend 3 hope to have incoming physical damage. This means that the GM tells the players how much damage their player character is taking from an attack. The player can then decide to spend 3 hope to take half as much damage instead. If the player wanted to do this again on an additional attack, they'd need to spend another 3 hope. Make sense? If 2 or more effects can apply to a situation and the rules don't tell you which order to apply them in, the player controlling the effects, including the GM, can apply the effects in any order. For example, if one ability lets you spend a hope to retaliate after an attack and another ability lets you gain a hope when you mark a hit point, you can decide to gain the hope first, then spend it to make an attack. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. If you want to apply 2 or more effects, they must both be able to successfully resolve to be used together. Enjoy your breakfast, Warcraft, even if it is in quotation marks. For example, if you can clear a stress every time you roll with fear, and you have an ability that lets you make a roll with fear into a roll with hope, you can't clear a stress and then change the roll to be with hope instead of fear. Yes. However, if you have an ability that can make a roll with fear into a roll with hope, and you have an ability that you can use when you roll with hope, you can do that. Because you turn it from fear into hope, and then you use that hope ability. At the GM's discretion, most effects can stack. For example, if 2 bards give you a rally die, you can spend both of them on the same roll. However, you can't stack conditions, advantage or disadvantage, or other effects that say you can't. Once a spell's effect is in play, as long as it doesn't mention an expiration, it continues until a PC or the GM ends it, or until the fiction changes in a way that would naturally stop it. This means that if you cast a spell and then switch out that domain card for another in your vault, the spell's effect can remain active even though that card is no longer in your loadout. Very fun. Or very nasty. If a rule tells you to spend a resource, you lose that resource once you spend it. Yes. For example, when you spend a hope on an ability, you clear a hope that you've marked on your character sheet. Similarly, if the bard gives you a rally die, when you choose to spend it and add its result to your roll, you lose that die and return it to the other player. Unless an effect states otherwise, you can't spend hope or mark stress multiple times on the same feature to increase or repeat its effect on the same roll. For example, if a feature says you can spend a hope to add 1d6 to the damage roll, you can't spend 2 hope and add 2d6 instead. If a feature says mark a stress to gain +3 bonus to your spellcast roll, you can't mark 2 stress and gain +6 bonus. However, on an effect like the Guardian's Hope feature, which says spend 3 hope to clear 2 armor slots, you can spend 6 hope to clear 4 armor slots. Because this effect isn't applying its bonus to a specific roll, you're just activating the feature more than once. So, same roll, no multiple uses. This is less specific to a roll. Some features let you affect a roll after the result has been totaled, such as the Sarah's Prayer Dice, the Fairy's Wings, or the Grace Domain's Endless Charisma. In this case, you use it after the GM declares if the roll succeeds or fails, but before the narrative consequences unfold, such as damage being rolled or another dice roll is made. Sometimes certain effects, bonuses, or conditions state that they last until the end of the scene. At the GM's discretion, a scene continues until the current narrative situation has played out. This chase scene might end when the PCs have caught their quarry, or when they've escaped pursuit. A battle scene usually ends when one side has fled, surrendered, or been entirely defeated. There's uncertainty about when a scene is considered to be over. Throw it to the table and see what the players think makes sense. You don't have to linger in a scene after the most engaging actions and interactions have occurred. If you want to play out their implications or process the emotions, but the heat of the moment has passed, that aftermath can take place in its own scene. That is fair. Player best practices. Very interesting. What should a player do best? Embrace danger, use your resources, tell the story, discover your character. Don't be afraid to leap in headfirst and think like a storyteller, asking what the hero of a novel or a TV show would do here. Think about not only what choice might be obvious, but what story could be most interesting, or how your character might approach the situation differently because of their background. Remember that you are not your character, and that it's okay to put them into harm's way, push them to their limits, and take big risks if it is right for the story. Their trials and their failures are not yours. You might always want to win, but players win by collaborating on a compelling narrative, not by having successful dice rolls every time. Ooh. That is a harsh lesson for some people. That is tricky. Some people don't like this. Use your resources. Player characters in Daggerheart have access to many resources that help them in their heroic journey. Chief among them is Hope, a resource that frequently comes and goes over the course of a session. You'll gain a Hope roughly every other time you make an action roll, so you're encouraged to spend it on Hope features, to help an ally, to utilize an experience, to initiate a tag team roll, and to use other features and abilities that cost Hope. Stress, hit points, and armor are your most essential other resources. They interact in varying ways that you can manipulate and optimize with the domain abilities, ancestry features, class features, and more. Players excited about the crunch of interacting mechanics look to those resources and think about how to manage them to get the most out of your character. Tell the story. You're an equal partner in telling the story alongside everyone else at the table. GM presents opportunities and challenges for the player along the way, but they are not the sole author of the fiction you're exploring together. Daggerheart is a collaborative game where everyone is responsible for bringing the tone, feel, and themes they're interested in to the group. If you have an idea for a description or a detail to add, feel free to offer it to the table. If you want a specific emotional arc to be part of your story, talk to your GM about finding opportunities to include it, and seize those opportunities when they show up. When you reach these moments in the story, take the time to showcase these emotions, the emotions driving your character forward and the desires spurring their actions. Your role as a player in Daggerheart is to guide your character along the best story arc you can, not necessarily to always make the most tactical or strategic moves. Think about what you're interested in, saying thematically with the narrative, and let that be expressed through your character. Discover your character. It's okay not to know everything about your character when you sit down to play for the first time, 10th time, or even the 100th time. When the game begins, you only have a few pieces of information to go on, such as what your character might be good at, some backstory, their relationships with a few other characters, and what kind of weapon they carry. That's perfectly fine, because you'll build on your character throughout the game. Think of character creation as an ongoing process. The GM might turn to you to ask something about your past that you haven't worked out or thought of yet. You could ask this opportunity to invent something on the spot, or ask them to talk through some ideas with you before you settle on one. Try to use the game's fiction to discover the different aspects of your character, and let those discoveries flow into the decisions they make. And then we have leveling up. We have 4 tiers of play, going from level 1 to levels 8 and 10. And then you choose advancements, 2 options per level. Wait, do you... at level 2 you gain a permanent +1 bonus to your proficiency, and then afterwards you can choose to increase your proficiency in tier 3 and tier 4. Oh, and these, the darker marked boxes, you need to choose both of them to increase them. Wait. Yes. Level 2, 5, and 8, you get that +1 bonus. And then the other 2 to get to +6 are from those. There's rules on raising damage thresholds, taking domain cards, and multi-classing. And then we get to equipment. Let's read up a little bit here. Finally, take a new domain deck card at your level or lower, increasing the special abilities your characters can use. So these are things you can choose, and this is something you just get. You, however, get to choose what you get. Once you have 6 or more domain cards, you need to choose which to keep in your loadout and which to store in your vault. It's a bit gameplay, like video gamey, but I like the idea. So, multi-classing. Starting at level 5, you can choose multi-classing as an option when leveling up. You multi-class, you get to choose an additional class, select one domain from that class, and gain access to their class feature. Take the appropriate multi-class module and add it to the right side of your character sheet, and choose a foundation card from a subclass of your choice. If that foundation card has a spellcast trait on it, you can choose to use that trait when making a spellcast roll, or use a spellcast trait from your original subclass. If you did not previously have a spellcast trait and now require one for your multiclass, you must use the spellcast trait noted on your new subclass. Naturally. When you multiclass, you must cross out one available take an upgraded subclass card option on this tier of your level up sheet, meaning you can't gain the mastery card for any subclass. You also cross out any other multiclass options, as characters can only multiclass once. Okay. Choose a domain from your new class that you don't already have access to. Moving forward, whenever you get to choose domain cards, you can choose from cards that match your additional domain at half your current level rounded up. This means a level 5 wizard who decides to multiclass into druid chooses the sage domain to choose any sage domain cards of level 3 or lower. Any attacks, spells, or other moves you use while multiclassing are always performed at your current level. For example, a level 6 wizard who multiclasses into a druid can use the tier 3 beast form options. If any move you get by multiclassing asks you to use a number of dice equal to your level, use the level on your character sheet. The half-level restrictions only applies to selecting domain cards, not the mechanics written on them. Very good. So, then we get armor. Armor has, we have weapons, you have name, traits, range, damage, burden, and features. What are they called? What trait do they use? What range are they used in? What damage do they deal? Do they, are they wielded in one hand or two? And what feature may they have? Armor has the name, the base thresholds, the base score, so the amount of times, armor slots you can mark, and the feature, if they have any. So if you want to use your armor, you can say that a severe damage is reduced to major, major is reduced to minor, minor is reduced to nothing. We have some weapons. Players can choose one tier 1 primary weapon during character creation. Okay. There are just a lot of improved weapons and different named weapons, but these are easily homebrewed. Ooh, the Combat Wheelchair by Mark Thompson. The Combat Wheelchair is a rule set designed to help you play a wheelchair user in Daggerheart. This section provides mechanics and narrative guidance for you to work from, but feel free to adapt the flavor text to best suit your character. Have fun with your character's wheelchair design and make it as unique or tailored to them as you please. When describing how your character moves, you can use descriptions following. Consequences. GMs should avoid breaking a character's wheelchair or otherwise removing it from play as a consequence unless everyone at the table, especially the wheelchair user's player, gives their approval. That's fair. Your character is assumed to be skilled in moving their wheelchair and navigating numerous situations in it. As a result, the only wheelchair that gives a penalty to a PC's evasion is the heavy frame model. All wheelchairs can be maneuvered using one or two hands outside of combat. However, when being used as a weapon, the chair is restricted to require one or two hands to perform attacks, depending on the model you've chosen. If you're playing a character who is limited to no ability in their arms, their wheelchair can be attuned to them by magical means. For example, your character might use a psychic link to guide the chair around like a pseudo-electric wheelchair. All the rules presented here can be tailored and adapted to any character's needs. You have light, heavy, and arcane wheelchairs. You're encouraged to consider the type of character you're playing and the class you belong to, then choose a model that best matches that character concept. Nice. Light frames don't do a lot of physical damage. And then you have higher tiers. Arcane wheelchair. They have frames that are tuned to your character and magic, allowing them to channel their spells through the chair. Unlike other primary magic weapons, the arcane frame model doesn't specify a trait to use when making an attack with it. Instead, you use the spellcast trait indicated by your subclass. And they're reliable! +1 to attack rolls. Nice. Oh, that's pretty neat. Also have secondary weapons, so these are all one-handed. And we have armor tables. You have 4 types of tier 1 armor, gambeson, leather, chainmail, full plate. And then we have other types of armor that have some cool features. Let's see. Legendary armor would be Dunamis Silk Chain. 13 to 36. Oh, so it's not always half. In fact, it's most often not half. Pretty much only half on tier 1. Okay. So it does increase the scale between major and severe. Oh, look at him. So excited about hot metal. And then we have a loot table, which I've heard people say is not very much. Yeah, there's 60 60 options. People will start homebrewing this. There's consumable loot as well, also 60 options. Full example of play. How long? Oh, 4 pages, that's not too bad. But I am starting to flag. I should not have done this after volunteering in the afternoon, because I am running out of spoons. However, that is not a bad thing, because I have friends that are currently streaming. So, yeah, I will go rest. No worries. Right, let's see. Our Gamesian Sun are still available. Dom is also live at the moment. I'm going to get myself a die. I'm going to get a D12 because of Daggerheart. I will be kind to myself, Warcraft. I will. Ah. I've got myself a very nice purple and orange D12. So, I can only raid once. Well, I can raid multiple times, but it is not effective. On a 1 to 4, we will raid Kamesy. On a 5 to 8, we will raid Sunbury. And on a 9 to 12, we will raid Stamkunst. And it is a 1. I guess my dice love Kamesy. So, thank you all so much for being here. I should get back in frame. It's a little bit of a short stream today. Maybe I'll stream a little bit more tomorrow. Maybe. However, with that said, it has been a delight. And... oh. I have some issues here. Nope. Kamesy is still live. That is still good. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. I will be staying up for a bit still, but I'm just going to take things slowly. Thank you so much for hanging out. It is always nice to have you with me. This will be on YouTube in a short while, couple days, and either I'll be streaming tomorrow or I'll be streaming on Friday, where we go back to Timberborn, because I've been having a lot of fun with that game. Today I finished a 50 by 50 map with our happiness for over 69. I believe in total it was 72. So, raid Game C. We are going to go to the Crocodile Empire. You can copy one of these messages so you can show that you're part of the stream in the raid. First one is for subscribers, second is for just regular good viewers. And I hope that I'll see you all soon. Goodbye!